All right, good morning, drawing and painting too. It's Ms. Davis here again. So now that we've gone over the methodology for choosing your colors, the next thing we want to do is how do we actually apply them? So I do have a method for this, and it's worked for me. Every color pencil artist does it slightly different. It's nice to try out somebody else's technique and then find what works for you and what doesn't work for you. I want to quickly show you what not to do. This looks really sloppy and very juvenile for a number of reasons, and when you compare it to what I want you to do, you'll see why. So number one, what we're trying to do is get rid of the pencil outline. So when you go to draw this, it should be drawn very lightly in pencil. Now I have had students in the past that have done really successful, beautifully rendered colored pencil drawings where they have purposefully used colored pencil to outline and use weighted lines in certain parts of the fruits and vegetables or their drawings in general, and that's perfectly fine as long as it's consistent. But what we don't want is some sloppy pencil outline that you didn't think about. Right now we're only really using two colors. We're using indigo and we're using red. That kind of flattens things out. It's kind of shaded in a really sloppy direction. It's shaded in multiple different directions. Remember, you want to follow the contour of the fruit. You want to use as many colors that make sense. And you want to make sure that your consistency with whatever technique you're doing is key. So if you decide to go in here and your style is more of a scribble kind of thing, then everything really needs to be consistent. You'll find your comfortable way of doing it after you do the next couple of preliminary processes. So with that being said, this is the bad one. This is a much better version, a start of a much better version here. And then, of course, you can see the reason why is I always start out with indigo, especially on something that's red like this with the apple. You're going to start out just establishing contrast. Contrast is extremely important. We know that we have the white of the paper for our white values. Now we need to start figuring out exactly where are our darker values. So we just want to start really building up that contrast with our indigo. And you notice how I don't have indigo all over the entire place, but I'm really just starting to build up the darkest values where I see them. From there, I'm going to start to layer my red. Now, you can choose the red out of the box that you were given, the 12-pack that you were given. I also have another couple of reds here that I really like, Crimson Lake, and I really like this purpley kind of mulberry color. Totally up to you what you want to use. But again, I am following whatever color you're choosing. You're making sure to follow the contour of the fruit or the object, making sure that you're really consistent using those, remember those small circles that we talked about. If you really want lots of shading, you want to think about where you're going to put your highlights. Where are the highlights for your fruit? And from there, you want to start to make sure that you're at least establishing some kind of idea as to where those highlights are going to be so that you're able to shade around them. Now, I'm not going to do this entire fruit because I think the video would end up being too long. But what I will do is show you how I apply my color. So I lay down my reds, and I'm working kind of fast. You are not expected to work this fast, but you can see that I'm still following the contour of the fruit. And forgive me while I turn this. Turn your paper and work on it comfortably. I cannot tell you how many times I walk around and see students like with their arm like this, like shading, like really uncomfortable. You've got to do whatever you have to do in order to make this really comfortable for you so that you're able to shade really nicely, consistently, and you're able to build up that color really gradually. Again, I want a nice, clean, hard edge between the object and the background. The shadow is a little bit different. The shadow on the table is a little bit different as you should have softer edges on the shadow, if you will. All right, so I'm putting this color down. Making sure that I'm not able to see any of the lines, that it's really nice and cohesive all the way around. Now to build up some of those darker values, and I'm going to just focus on this side real quick, to build up some of those darker values and some of those lighter values. And oops, oh my gosh, I forgot my highlight. What am I going to do? I will show you guys. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting in some of those greens. Remember we talked about color choice. I laid down my indigo. You can go through and do a whole monochromatic indigo color color pencil drawing like I just showed you before you even start the other colors. Then I laid my base color on. The next thing I'm going to do is go through and my darkest values, I'm going to start laying down that green. All right, what's the rule of thumb with mixing color pencils? A rule of thumb is doing 3 layers. So once I put down this green, then I'm going to go through and this is not easy for many people, but I've been doing this for a long time. So I kind of like to work like this. Then I'm going to go through and just make sure that I put my red back down that I used just to make sure it doesn't come across as green, but instead it's just a really dark value. All right, here's where I love to implement other colors. So this is where I'm going to go in and I'm going to start building up some of my oranges. Definitely put in little tiny pops of yellow. I like to put the yellow in the areas that are a little bit lighter. So you have to be careful about dragging one color in from the next. Remember, yellow and blue make what? Green, right? So as that yellow mixes with that indigo, you're going to end up getting that green. So just be careful with that when you're doing things like lemons, for example, because your lemon could very easily turn into a lime, and that's not always something that you want to happen. So you just want to make sure that you're thinking about stuff like that. So here I am going through, trying to do this fast so the video is not too long and so that you kind of get the idea as to what I'm doing. I'm starting to get this wax bloom because I'm moving really fast. So if that happens and you're finding that you're not able to put more color down, make sure that you go through and you can take your eraser and just kind of very gently lift that last little bit of wax bloom up, and that will help. The last layer of colored pencil, that'll help get all the wax bloom up. So I'm putting down my color, putting down my red, putting down my orange. Goodness, I'm forgetting my highlights. What is a person to do? Just put a little bit of that down. I really like a good pop of purple in there too. Everyone kind of has their own preferences. I like a little bit of the complementary color. So yellow, we're using just a little bit of it. So going through and putting just that tiny pop of purple. A lot of apples have like these really cool like little lines in them. So going through and establishing that tiny, tiny little bit of purple in some of your darkest areas is going to help make that yellow in there really kind of sing. It's going to like really stand out. All right, so we're starting to have a pretty good apple. Now, real quick, I want to burnish it. With burnishing, you want to be really super careful how you do this. You want to make sure that you're doing it very clean. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll go from light and I'll mix it into the dark. Otherwise, you might move that dark into your lights too much and lose some of your lighter values. I like to go through the edges and get my dark values done, and you'll kind of see, you can see the tooth of the paper is showing through, but once you start burnishing it, the tooth will be a little bit different. The tooth starts to cover up. Now, I'm starting to drag the purple and the reds into that orange and yellow. That's not always a bad thing. It can be a textural thing, especially with apples. They have those lines. So that can be okay. But when you go to do areas like the yellow, things that are supposed to be more purely light and stuff like that, you just want to make sure that you're super careful. See how I'm pulling it? So let's pull it down and be careful. Okay, so I forgot my highlights. What am I gonna do? So the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start to erase and figure out where were my highlights supposed to go. Okay, I know that I had one that sat like right in here. I know I had a couple that really kind of followed the contour of the apple, and I think I had one that kind of like ran down the side, right? These highlights are going to give your apple a lot more of a realistic feel. So if you can, blend the edges, like lighten up. You're kind of like shading with your pencil, if you will. Remember back to charcoal, the subtractive process, we kind of shaded into your charcoal with an eraser. But we noticed that some areas don't get super white, and that's okay. Like we can try burnishing them with the white, and you want some softer highlights. Not all of them have to be stark white. In fact, they're not really supposed to all be exactly the same. And then we might have some that are supposed to be. So this is where I go in with my rounded X-Acto knife, and I just very gently pick out the areas that are supposed to be stark white. And I hold the X-Acto knife at an angle, not straight up and down. And from there, I think we'll go through and do a little tiny pop of a really bright highlight right back in here. And one right in there. And then what I do is I go through and I burnish with my white colored pencil, And what that does is help hold down any of the paper that could be sticking up, because it could tear your paper a little bit, but it also diffuses the edges so that you have a really nice soft edge with your highlights. All right, and that's how you do, in my case, a very quick apple. I'll show you the background and the floor with the next video.